Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Well, hello, and welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. I'm your host, John Johnson, and I'm going to be talking about where is the love? Where is it? Are you displaying that? Are you loving yourself? Are you loving those around you? Well, let's give it some thought. Here's an example. You walk into a place, the music's going, and do you just kind of mouse into the room, just sort of checking it out, trying to find the first spot that you can go into and hide so that nobody notices that you're there? When you walk into a room, do you tend to hide behind other people, as in family occasions? Or if you're in the classroom, do you kind of sit in the back because you don't want to be seen? Do you just kind of shrink down when you're in the presence of other people? Well, you know, there's the shyness thing that happens. And there's also the thing about not having any self-confidence. And there is also the part where we have just been beat down or allowed ourselves to be beat down. It's like, where is the love? And I'm going to talk about why you want to work on that. So if you are interested in dating someone, first impressions obviously mean a lot. And while it is always in vogue to be happy to greet someone, but you have to feel your presence. You have to own your space. And what I'm saying here is you don't have to apologize for being there. Being nice and being cordial, having manners, that is always the thing to do. But when you're behaving in a way that is so gracious, or it might even come off as being a bit false. But when you're behaving in a way as if you don't feel like you deserve to be there, then what that carries with it is sort of a weakness. It's sort of like you don't know your own presence. You don't know who you are. And when people are trying to meet you, they're trying to get a sense of your strengths. And they're sizing up, it's a self-conscious thing, but they're sizing up, okay, who is this person? Are they going to meet my energy? Are they going to meet my needs? Or is this somebody I'm going to have to prop up? And here's the part about loving yourself. You got to have self-confidence when it comes to meeting other people. And you have to do work on yourself. So if you're beat down, beat up, or feeling like I need to find another relationship so that I'll feel better about myself, believe me, that's not going to work for you. It's only a recipe for disaster, because you're going to give the impression that you're needy, and that's not attractive to people. So you got to learn how to love yourself. And there could be a lot of things going on here. Maybe it's a simple makeover. You just need to wear some nice clothes. It'll make you feel better about yourself. It'll change your attitude. That works for a lot of people. If you have been in a dry spell for a while, you just can't seem to connect with your friends, and you've made phone calls and people aren't returning your calls. Well, yeah, that could feel a bit empty. But realize there could be a lot of factors behind something like that. So you got to find some way to give yourself some love, and spend some money on yourself if you have it, or just take some time out, read a book, do something that you know that makes you feel good about yourself, so that when you get into some of those interactions with people, you come at it with some energy. Because I can tell you, if you come at somebody and you just sound like you appear to be on low power, again, that's not attractive. It might come off to the other person as being a bit needy. And if these are first impressions, I can tell you it's going to be a lasting one, and you may not get very far. And if you're a guy who is in this situation, or a girl, you're going to wind up being stuck in the friend zone, because somebody that's going to be attracted to you is really going to want to be attracted to you because you bring something to the table. Energy, intensity, confidence, grace. I think most of us can do that one pretty well, being nice and being gracious. But if that's all we have, then you're going to come off as seeming a bit weak. And that doesn't generally tend to get you very good second dates. Because I have this thing that when I was dating, what I would do is the dating thing was about you go out on that first date. And then the second one would be determined on the first one. Did you have a good meeting the first time? Did they seem like they were good people? Were they honest? How did they treat others? If you happen to have gone to a restaurant, how did they treat the host or hostess? And do they have tendencies to have road rage? And for ladies who appreciate chivalry, did the guy open the door for her? Or did he pull up to the house, honk the horn, and say, hey, we got to go? All of these are etiquette things. It's about having manners. And I think you should be on your best behavior all the time. But these are indications. And if early on these things seem to be kind of out of place with your standards of how you want to be treated or what you like to see in a person, then, again, that's a very powerful first impression. So we're talking about where is the love. I'm going to take a short break, and we'll talk about this some more. Stay tuned.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now, don't bother, what's hot on Netflix, and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Hello there, and welcome back to Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. Again, I'm your host, John Johnson. And picking up where I left off, now this is something that I've seen a lot of, and it's, guys, pay attention to this. When you walk into a nightclub, the sound is bumping, and the guys are walking in, and I'm talking about the single guys are walking in, they're scoping out the room, trying to see who the ladies are, and oftentimes, the guys will go to the bar, they'll buy a drink, have something in their hand, and they're standing along the wall, and they're just sort of being spectators. Well, I think a lot of guys, sometimes they come in with their crew. Guys often make jokes about women coming in with their posse, so women tend to cluster together, and if you're a guy trying to break through, a lot of confident guys, they have no problem stepping into a group of women and sort of entertaining them a bit while they get to the person that they wanted to, say, go out and dance with. Well, now, if you're a guy standing against a wall, we're still in a place of women want to be pursued. And if you're standing against a wall, you're not likely going to be the guy that's going to be getting a lot of dancing. So you have to peel yourself off the wall, go out there, and approach a woman and ask her to dance. Now, you may get the rejection card because she may have somebody that she's particularly interested in, but as you know the rules, it's okay. Hey, you're just trying to find out if she wants to dance, and it's not about having, taking her home and making love to her tonight. Obviously guys have that idea because they find somebody, sexy, sort of attractive kind of thing, but put that aside, because if that's what they think you're after, then you're pretty much going to get the penalty flag right there. And a lot of women will be watching you too. But back to the example of what to do here. The idea is that if you're standing against the wall, a woman's not going to approach you because you don't have the energy, you don't have the intensity. And again, women like to be pursued, they like to be approached and asked and given the option. I'm here to tell you, being polite gets the pass. There's a lot of goofy things that you can do and say, but if you're polite and approachable yourself, then you can kind of get past some of the awkwardness. Again, confidence really helps. And the cheesy pickup lines, I would say put that aside. Be original, be authentic, because that's who you're going to be anyway. And what tends to happen is guys tend to pick up these bad habits, from videos that they've seen or just listening to their buddies, and it doesn't go anywhere. Because here's another thing. At this day and age, women have been approached by a lot of guys. So if you come off as seeming like a copy of somebody else that's already been out there, believe me, it's going to register on the BS meter, and she's just going to pass you up and say, or she may dance a couple of dances with you, but you're not going to be spectacular. And I've seen examples of guys that have gotten out to dance and they've been, pretty gregarious, and just the fact that they're friendly gets them attention, gets them at least a second look or a second dance. And that's very endearing. I've also noticed the guy who notices the one woman or two or three or four, who's ever out there, and they're not getting any dances, go over and dance with them, because women are good at noticing men. You may not know it, but they can tell you with certainty what you wore that night, what kind of watch you had on, what your cologne is, all of those things. So you get noticed when you walk in the room. Standing against the wall, believe me, they're going to see you. And they're going to be, and you may make eye contact with somebody, but there and again, get out on the floor, show some love, and dance with the one girl who's not seeming to get a lot of attention. I mean, it may seem like it's a pity dance, but you're trying to show who you are and mix it up a bit. In fact, I think, honestly, that's a good way to kind of get some attention. I mean, some guys will just zero in on a particular woman and try to monopolize her time. Well, that might be an approach, but I think what winds up happening is she's going to want to, if she came out with her friends, let's say, she's probably going to want to dance with a variety of guys. And given that if you're trying to monopolize her time, there's going to be some conversation, at least in her head, about, okay, this guy's monopolizing my time. And, I think you'll get an opportunity to dance with her again, because the fact that she's out there, she's probably out there to have a good time. And you can be part of that. But there is the interest in giving somebody an opportunity to get to know a little bit about you. And that can be done in several ways. If you were worried about the opportunity of seeing her again, you might make the overture, say, hey, look, I know we're having a good time this evening. I don't want to necessarily lose an opportunity to speak with you again, but I don't want to monopolize your time. So I'd like to share with you my number. I'd like to exchange numbers. That's sort of an easy way to get to have that happen without dominating someone and then making them feel like you're being possessive, because that is a trait that women might find a bit over the top, especially when you're just meeting someone, okay? Being dominant, being possessive, because that's, if women have had relationships and they've gotten out of one with a guy because he was over the top, a little possessive, really jealous, that really turns women off. I mean, look at all the profiles if you and read it, okay? This is another thing I've heard about, women say the guys don't even read the profiles. Well, if you read them, a lot of them will say that they don't want a guy who's they say they want a guy that's laid back. Okay, that's what you'll read. And I think what they're saying is they don't want some jealous, possessive guy. Because here's what you have. That is very scary to a woman, because there's a whole lot of drama that comes with something like that. And if you're an example of that to them, believe me, they're going to get the penalty flag. They're going to be done. You're going to be toast. And they're going to just pass over you and look for somebody that's a little less aggressive. And, there's that fine line. It says, they like to be pursued, but they don't necessarily want to be smothered, you see. So you got to find that fine line. And then it's about communicating with them. I think, and this is a really interesting one, women, when they're interested in a guy, they'll listen to pretty much anything he has to say. But that's because they're interested. But, you can turn that on its ear if you show an interest in them by asking them questions about themselves. And you can get a lot of information out of a woman. All right, guys, and this is particularly for the guys that are listening to this podcast. Now, I know women, you're listening, and I'm going to show some attention to that subject also. Guys, like I said, ask them questions about themselves. And quite often, this is where you really get a sense of who they are. Is this something that they're on a rebound? And if they are, okay, guys, you need to know that about the situation. Okay, you may not get a lot of time with this person because they may be just trying to rid themselves of bad memories. They could be on having their divorce party with all their girlfriends, and they're just having a good time. So she's not looking to really get get pin tied up with someone in particular at this point. So there again, it may determine a lot on where she is, what stage of her life she's in. And when you know those kinds of answers, then you don't worry about spending too much time or not enough time, as could be the case in some situations, but because you ask the questions. Because women don't like to be bored with the guys talking about sports or the guys talking about the construction project they're doing around the house. I mean, it's one thing you can share a little bit about you're a handyman, because women can appreciate a guy that has skills. Yeah, he can, paint and texture and pour concrete. All of those kinds of things. I mean, a woman can appreciate that, but there again, just don't make that the dominating the conversation. I remember this one guy who, even amongst his guy friends, this is all he would talk about, his own projects. And if I recall, the guy owned a relatively modest place. And so it's not about the money thing, about how big his place was or wasn't. But he was always talking about the drywall or the door that he had to put in or the sink that he had to put in. And I'm a guy who's done all of that kind of work. And I don't really need somebody describing all of these things to me. I can imagine what it's like. But you would know that this guy, as a friend now, he never knew anything about anybody else around him. And it wasn't just me, but this was a common denominator with guys who are insecure. And they think that it's real interesting to talk about themselves and all the skills they have, when what you really want to do, guys, is you really want to ask a woman questions about herself, because then you can find out where she's been, what her experience in life has been, and you can kind of figure out, hey, if you fit the picture. Because by knowing who she is or what her experiences have been, you know what kinds of things to avoid, and you can also figure out if she's had a lot of drama in her life, you might be able to learn for yourself, hey, this might be somebody I want to avoid and could pass on. And you know what? And I'll tell you this is where you can be a winner with your friends. All right, guys, if you're talking to a woman and you find out that she's really not good for you, maybe one of your buddies might be a better fit, and you can play matchmaker. And I'll tell you what, that is a cool thing to do, because it is a very unselfish thing to be able to share that information with somebody else. You tell her this, and that I think is a really cool thing to do. So I'm going to take a pause right now, and I'll come back shortly.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do. All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Hello, and welcome back to Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. I'm your host, John Johnson. And what I've been talking about is where's the love? I kind of opened the podcast talking about, some self-esteem things, how you approach people. I was giving the guys some tips on, how to approach women and how to show some love. And, I didn't want to ignore the women. They certainly have their role in this. And I was giving the example of in the place of guys and sharing the attention of what it's like being a guy. You go into a nightclub and the music's bumping, and if you're going to stand along the wall, and that's a sign of weakness. Women want to be approached. So the flip side to this is, I realize these are sort of generic roles that we have, and in describing that scenario about a guy walking into a club, having he goes to the bar, has a drink in his hand, and he kind of stands along the wall, and as if he's standing there, he's like a magnet. He's there and he's waiting for women to come up and ask him to dance. I said, well, guys don't expect it because there's 30 or 40 or 50 other guys in the room that are going to go out there and they're going to ask them to dance with them, and that's really the approach that you're going to have to take. And you know what? I think you can, this is something, I don't know how a lot of other people feel about it, but when you're out in a group setting like that and you're on a dance floor, carrying and dancing with your drink in the hand is really, it just seems like it's a real childish thing to do. Set your drink down. Have your hands free. It's almost like dancing with your cell phone in your hand. I mean, would you do that? Would you be looking at your cell phone? No. And also, a lot of people that do that kind of thing, they're blitzed too. They're a little faded. So when they've been drinking, it's like they have to guard that drink. Okay, do you want to set it down? No, maybe you don't want to set it down because you don't want somebody to pour something in it or do something naughty to it. But by and large, I'm like, if you're going to go out to these things, don't be so wasted that you can't pay attention to your date or the person who you're dancing with to be able to focus on things. So that's another thing. Don't be so wasted that you can't pay attention. And that's also for women too. So on the women's side of this, where's the love? Now, you got to have a little confidence in yourself. And it's great that you have something to share. I think you all do. When you're talking with a guy, you want to have your confidence, okay? Because what a guy doesn't want to necessarily have to do is spend a whole lot of time trying to draw you out. I mean, it may seem cute, but I know a lot of women have even shared their feelings about not wanting to seem too smart because they don't want to intimidate a guy. Yeah, guys do have fragile egos, and I think for the part about being too smart, I think that's just too bad. I think you don't want to dumb it down. You want to find somebody who's your equal. So if you have a master's degree in accounting or a master's degree in English or something, then it's okay to share that. I think the context in which you share that, I think, is pretty important, because if you're doing it in a way to invalidate someone, let's say, here's just an example, let's say the guy is in college and he is pursuing a degree in something. And if you've already got a degree in that, okay, I think it's okay to share that. But when you're doing it, are you doing it as a way of adding to the conversation, or are you doing it as a way to show one-upsmanship, that you're more superior? Because quite often we can get into conversations and have opinions of things, and then the one thing we do is then we start trotting out our credentials to say that the reason I have a higher opinion or a more important opinion than you do is because I have better credentials, which isn't necessarily a good argument. It is a position that you can take, but it doesn't necessarily get you more respect, because what it really comes out as, it just comes out as you're trying to shut someone else down. And that's not showing love. Okay, where the love would be in this situation, it would be about when you really have the knowledge, there's a way in which you can float that out there and a person can recognize that you have it without you having to necessarily tell them and hit them over the head with it. Because if the person cannot take the subtlety that you are talking about something with a sense of knowing, then maybe that person doesn't really have much awareness, and they're probably going to be missing that on a lot of different places too. So just file that away. It doesn't have to be something that that if you have that one incident, but it's a situation which you might want to keep aware of. And guys, it goes both ways. You don't just trot out your credentials just to shut someone down, because that's very condescending. And that's a quick way to lose a date. That's a really quick way to not get another opportunity. And again, women, back to you, back to your position. Where's the love? Being available, being a little bit vulnerable is cute. It's sexy, and that gives a guy at least the awareness that you're approachable. Now, if you're not, call it. Say I'm not. I'm not interested in whatever it is you have to offer, and a guy can appreciate that. It's when you sort of lead the guy on, and then he finds out that you're not interested. That's what tends to upset the guys, because I think they can respect the fact that if it's not clicking, it's not clicking, and allow you the freedom to move on and give him the opportunity to know that, the sooner the better. Another thing that I think kind of has a factor in this is appearance. I think whenever you go anywhere to meet with someone, I think you should really have your best foot forward. I think you should really take time to build something into your appearance. If you're going out in the evening, obviously after 5 wear is appropriate. If you're meeting someone in an afternoon just for brunch, don't dress up in a cocktail dress, because that's not what it's for. You meeting someone in the afternoon, there's dressy casual, and that's more appropriate than after 5 wear. Of course, if you're going to be doing something after 5, bring a change of clothes. That's always a nice thing to have when you are going to be participating in more than one event. So give yourself that flexibility. But realize if you overdress for an occasion, then it kind of comes off as either pretentious or you have an awareness factor that's not really working. Because think about when events have invitations. And again, if you overdress, it seems like, what were you thinking? And once you get there, there's probably not a whole lot you can do about it, because you basically come as you are. So have some awareness on that. I can't overstress. And again, dressing for the occasion, one would automatically think hygiene, but I think I'm going to say that. Remember, hygiene is very important. Oral hygiene, take a shower. And if just to think about this, guys, not too much cologne. Ladies, not too much perfume. It's horrible to get next to a person and then to find out that they have a scent that just drives you nuts, drives you off the wall. And I mean that in a bad way. I mean, if it's light, I think we can get past it. We all have our personal space, so that means you can probably be within that personal space thing, and it's not going to overload you. And then, the reality nowadays, there are a lot of people that have sensitivities to fragrances and things, and you can literally be a huge turnoff if you don't have that in check. So, and that's on both sides. And I'm talking about the hygiene thing, talking about what kind of cologne or how much to put on. Remember, just a little. Smell it in your personal space. You don't want to be smelling that thing throughout the whole room, because there are some that are just a little too pungent. And given that we all have our various sensitivities, that's just a big no-no. I have literally walked into places and you can smell someone in the room and you're nowhere near them. And it's amazing. You know how skunks can do their thing? The skunk can take a whole area and just have it with their scent. And you can't imagine how a little animal can do that. Sometimes perfume does the same thing. So think about it. It doesn't take a lot to fill a room. So dial it down. Just a little bit is great. And you know what? If it's just a little and they really like it, guess what? They'll move in closer to get a little bit more. And isn't that what you want? Some closeness? Consider that. Hey, I'm John Johnson. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast, and I was talking about where is the love. Remember to love yourself each and every day, because you're worth it. Thanks for listening.